All right, so in this video, we are going to be covering applications of decimals and percentages. So by now, you've been exposed to decimals and percents, and now we're going to be using them in scenarios. So the first thing we want to practice is making sure we know how to find a percent or a decimal from a problem, right? So there's going to be problems where they're presenting a scenario and they ask you to find the percent or find the decimal. So on this one, the first thing you have to know, and again, we've done examples like this before. When you have a scenario, the first thing you have to do is you are going to have to create a fraction from the problem. So make sure you read the question properly, make sure you know what they're asking you for, because you are going to have to create the fraction depending on what the question is asking. Once you create a fraction, if they ask you for a decimal, remember the decimal, you get it by dividing the numerator by the denominator. Now, if the question is asking you to go all the way to a percent, you are going to have to create a percent by converting the decimal, which we already know how to do. So for example, right here we have that we have 40 students in a class. On a certain day, 37 attended. What percent was present? I'm pretty sure you've seen this question before. So again, step one, you have to create a fraction. Since they're asking us for how many students were present, then that's the 37 out of the 40. Now, from here, you do have to create a decimal. You cannot jump from a fraction to a percent. To make the fraction into a decimal, remember, you just divide. So in your calculator, you go ahead and do 37 divided by 40, and you get 0.925. And then from here, you know how to make this into a percent, right? To make it into a percent, remember, we learned you move the decimal twice, and then you add the percent sign. So my answer is 92.5%. So these are the kinds of problems we are going to be starting with. Again, you set up a fraction, get a decimal, then get a percent. All right, so let's try one more here. Out of a class of 20 students, 17 of those students own a calculator. What percent of the class do not own a calculator? All right, so again, if you read this problem super quick, you might set it up incorrectly. The correct fraction for this problem is 3 over 20. Okay, so again, if you didn't read it slowly, you're going to have no idea where we got the 3. So again, we have 20 students, 17 own a calculator. But if you read the question, it says what percent do not own a calculator, right? So again, you should know that if 20 students are in total and 17 do, you just subtract. So 20 minus that 17 tells you how many students do not have a calculator, which is how we got the 3. Okay, so again, this was just meant to be a little bit tricky, just so you know that it's important to read the question. From here again, you should know how to do this. Put this in the calculator. 3 divided by 20 gives you 0.15. Again, you're not done. Since they're asking you for percent, again, we know we just have to move this twice, add the percent sign, and my final answer is 15%. Okay, so again, make sure you read the question properly. There's going to be little extra words in there that could change the problem. All right, out of 20 questions on the exam, William got 13 correct. What percent of the questions did he get correct? So again, here they're asking us for a percent. Now, the cool thing about this is this is how actually your grades are calculated, right? You take an exam that's 20 questions long and you got 13 correct, you should be able to figure out your grade yourself, right? So no need to run to your instructors and be like, oh my goodness, did I pass? You should be able to figure it out. So what percent did he get correct? Again, no trick here. We just have to set up the fraction. He got 13 questions out of the 20 correct. Now again, bust out your calculator. 13 divided by 20 is 0.65. Again, that would be a terrible grade because it's less than 1, right? But again, they're asking us for percent. So good thing for William is we still have to move the decimal twice, and his percent was 65%. Right? So again, not that great. In a class where 70 is the average passing grade, he would have not passed this test. But again, look at that. That's as easy as it is to figure out your grade in your question. So again, make a fraction, divide it, make it into a decimal, and then find your percent. So here, William could have studied a little bit more, right? Okay, now these types of questions don't have a scenario. They just are very straightforward. 9 is what percent of 90? So that's all they give you. So again, like we talked about it before, the first thing you have to do is make sure you set up a fraction. Now, what number goes on top and what number goes on the bottom, right? You have to be careful. So the little trick here is this little keyword, of. When you have the word of, the number next to it, that is your total. That's your whole number. So 9 is what? That means that the 9 is going to be my numerator and the 90 is my total because it has a word of 90. So 90 is the total. Okay, so make sure you caught that. The little word of, the number right after it, that's going to be your denominator. That's your total. From here, I'm pretty sure you guys got it, right? Same thing over and over again. What is a percent? Well, first we have to find the decimal. So in your calculator, go ahead and put 9 divided by 90, and you should get 0.1, right? And again, to make this into a percent, we already know you either multiply by 100, which is perfectly fine, or you can move the decimal twice to the right, which is also correct. It means the same thing. So again, if I move this twice, I do run out of space. So remember that little empty space, you fill it up with a 0, and the answer for this one is 10%. So that means that 9 is 10% of 90. All right. Okay, let's try one more just to make sure we got this, right? So this one, what percent of 150 is 180? So here I'm trying to trick you. Hopefully you don't fall for it. What do you think the fraction for this one is going to be? So again, we have two options. It's either 150 over 180 or 180 over 150. So again, remember, what gives it away is the word of. What percent of 150? That means that is my total. And in a fraction, the total always goes in the denominator. So what percent of 150 is 180? So that means the 180 goes on top, the word of, which is your total, goes on the bottom. And again, from here, I'm pretty sure you guys are experts on this. So 180 divided by 150. And again, don't freak out if the number on the top is bigger than the number on the bottom. So the numerator can be larger than the denominator. It's perfectly fine. But just so you know, we are expecting a percent that's going to be more than 100%, right? Because the numerator is big. So again, go ahead and divide 180 by 150, and you should get 1.2, right? Again, if you didn't get this in the calculator, go ahead and try it again. You should be getting 1.2. If the question would have been what decimal, we're done. But it says what percent. So as soon as you see percent, you know you have to keep on going. So we move this twice, add a little 0 there, add your percent sign, and my final answer is 120%. Okay, so again, don't be tempted to always put the small number on top of the fraction and the bigger number on the bottom. Not necessarily. So use little keywords. The word of is going to be the number on the bottom. Okay, in this case, it was smaller. That's okay. All right, let's try one more here. 340 is what percent of 170? Okay, so if you want to try by yourself, go ahead and just put pause. You should be able to do it on your own. But we are going to go ahead and do it together here, right? So 340 is what percent of 170? Again, ding, ding, ding. That was supposed to be a circle. Okay, epic failure. Let's try that again. There we go. It's better. So the word of tells you what goes where. So of 170, that means the 170 goes in the denominator. So my fraction is 340 over 170. Again, it's perfectly fine. Don't freak out. Oh my goodness, the number on top is bigger. That's fine. And then divide it out. If you divide this out, you should get a plain 2. So what in the world do we do? Same thing we've always done, right? That's your decimal. Again, there's no decimal. So when you don't have a decimal, you always put it right there at the very end. Now, that's the decimal. Let's make it into a percent. So you move it twice. Those empty spaces, you fill them up always with zeros. Add a percent sign, and my final answer is 200%. Okay, so not that complicated. So if you notice, it's the same procedure over and over again. When I ask you for a percent, you always start with a fraction, divide it out, get a decimal, move the decimal to get your percent. Super simple. All right, now let's go ahead and try to see if we could tackle some different kinds of problems. So for these problems, they're actually going to ask us to find a certain percent of a whole number. So the problems are going to be worded a little bit different. So the way to tackle these problems, we have to do two things. First thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to grab the percent and make it into a decimal. Okay, so if you don't remember how to do that, This is the one where you grab the decimal place and you move it twice to the left, or you divide by 100, whatever you feel more comfortable doing. Once you find that decimal, you're almost done. All you have to do is multiply that decimal times the whole number and you're done. Voila, that's it. Okay, so let me go ahead and show you an example of what I mean. On this one, they tell you find 20% of 85. This is the one where they give you a percent and they give you the total. Remember, the word of is the total. So you know that you're going to have to follow these two steps. Now, why are these kinds of problems important? You use them when you go to the store, right? You go to the store, you have an $85 purchase, but lucky for you, you have a coupon that's 20% off. And you want to make sure that they discount the right price, right? So in your calculator, you could just quickly do this, right? So step one here says you have to convert the percent into a decimal. We already know how to do that. We drop the percent sign, the decimal, we move it twice to the left, and 20% becomes 0.2. Right, you could put the extra 0 if you want 0.20, that's fine. You'll get the same answer. Okay, once we do that, step 2 says, okay, you're going to grab the decimal that you got and you're going to multiply it times the whole. So the whole is the total. So all I have to do is multiply the 0.2 that I got times the 85. And that is how we're going to find out what is 20% of 85. So in your calculator, you could just put 85 times 0.2 or 0.2 times 85, and you get the 17. So that means going back to the store, right? I have an $85 purchase. I have a 20% off coupon. That means that I'm going to get $17 off discounted, or $17 discounted, right? So that's for the way we use it. All right, let's go ahead and try another one here. What number is 40% of 123? So again, you see a percent, so you should be like, okay, I know what to do. And then of, that means that this is going to be your whole number, your total. So again, we already know how to do this, 40%. So we know we're going to have to make this percent into a decimal. Put a little decimal right there. How do you make a percent into a decimal? You move it twice to the left. So that becomes 0.4 or 0.40. And then if you don't remember, go back to step number 2. It says, okay, once you have your decimal, you multiply it times your whole number. So 0.4 times the 123. Go ahead and put that in your calculator, 0.4 times 123, press enter, and you get 49.2. So look at that, that's so easy. So when you're in H-E-B, Walmart, wherever, you have a coupon, you should be able to figure out the discounted price, right? So what is 40% of 123? 49.2. And we got a decimal, that's perfectly fine. If this would have been a money scenario, that means that out of the $123 purchase, I would get $49 with 20 cents discounted. Okay, that's where the decimal comes into play. All right, again, just moving things around so you don't freak out when you have one of these questions where you start with a percent and the wording is different. 32% of 150, again, the of tells you the total, is what number? This is exactly the same question that we've been doing in the last 2 slides. So again, I'm just going to walk through it pretty fast because it's the same thing. 32% of 150 is what number? We start with a percent always. Make it into a decimal, so we drop the sign at the little decimal. Remember, when it doesn't have a decimal, you put it at the end. Move it twice. That becomes 0.32. Once you have your decimal, simply multiply times the whole number. So we have 0.32 times 150. Put that in your calculator, you should get 48. So again, sometimes you end up with a pretty whole number, sometimes you end up with a decimal. Either way, it's fine. Okay, so here, 48 is 32% of 150. All right, let's make this interesting. So now we actually have a scenario. Okay, so here we have William. He's back, right? So earlier we know that he didn't pass his first exam, but let's see what he got on his second. So on his second exam, way to go, William. He got a 75, right? So he had a 75. But now he wants to know. The exam had 24 questions in total, right? So the exam consisted of 24 questions. He knows he got a 75%. He wants to know how many problems on the exam did he answer correctly. right? So he's like, oh my goodness, I passed, right? I got a 75. Now he's starting to wonder, okay, how many questions did I answer correctly? So again, you should be able to figure this out. I give you a percent. This is his grade. It's actually a percent. And I told you that there's 24 questions in total. So how many did he get correct? Super simple. Again, start with a percent, make it into a decimal. So I add a decimal, move it twice, drop the percent sign. So he got a 0.75, right, as a decimal, which is the same as 75%. And now, how do I find out what is 75% of 24? Well, we already know, we just multiply them. So 0.75 times 24, go ahead and put that in your calculator, and you should get 18. And again, in this question, we should have gotten a whole number, right? Because he either got the question right or he got it wrong. So there's no way of getting like 17.5, right? Actually, it might be possible, but if it's just a yes or no question, it's either yes, you got it right, or no, you didn't. So there you go. So look at that. He got a 75% on his test because he got 18 questions correct out of the 24 total. So that's as easy as, that's all you have to do to figure out how many he answered correctly. Just so you are ready, in case this question would have been the same, but it would have said, how many did he answer incorrectly? I don't want you to freak out and be like, oh my goodness, that changes the whole question, and what do I do now? It's the same thing. You would do the same thing, and since you know that he got 18 right out of the 24, then you should be able to quickly tell me, okay, that means he got 6 incorrectly, right? So you would just simply subtract. So no need to go back and do the whole problem again unless you want to because you're having so much fun. But there's no need to, right? You would just subtract and that's it. All right, here we go to the last problem for this video. Again, just trying to make it a little more interesting. So here we have Jimmy's salary. So his yearly salary is $34,000. So that's how much he earns every year. But because of his great work, he actually earned a 4% raise. The question is, what is his new salary? So try to take in everything that is being said in this problem. But again, don't freak out. So here we have a big number, $34,000. That's how much he earns. But again, he's doing so amazing in his job that his boss comes and be like, you know what, we're going to give you a 4% raise. So first thing we want to find out is how much money are they going to give him extra? Because the boss told us in percent, right? And we actually want to know money-wise. So first thing we're going to have to do is find out what is 4% of his current salary. What is 4% of 34,000? Again, you should know how to do this. We start with a 4% and we make it into a decimal. Right, so 4%, put the little decimal because it doesn't have one. It always goes at the very end, right there. We move it twice. When you have an empty space, you should know you fill it up with a 0. Right, so this is my decimal. Now, how do I find 4% of 34,000? Again, just like we've been doing in the last few problems, you multiply. So we're going to multiply the percent, but as a decimal, which is 0.04, times 34,000. Put that in your calculator, but be very careful with the zeros. So if you put an extra 0 or 1 less, you are going to get the wrong answer. So 0.04 times the 34,000 gives you 1,360. So Jimmy's salary is $34,000, and his 4% raise means that he's going to be getting a raise of 1,360. Again, if you are so tired of this problem, you would be like, okay, I'm done. Awesome. That's it. But be careful. The actual question is, what is his new salary? If the question would have been, what is his raise? Then yes, you're done. 1,360 is how much he's getting extra. But since you're asking us, what is his new salary? There's an extra step required. But again, it's not a big step, like a very confusing step. So if you know that this is his current salary and he's going to get this extra, what's his new salary? Very good. We're just going to have to add it together. So we're going to add his current salary to the bonus or his raise. And that's going to give us how much he's going to earn now. So go ahead and do 34,000 plus 1,360. And you should get that his new salary is 35,360. And that's it. So there we go. That is how you find these types of problems. Just make sure that you read them correctly and that you know what they're asking you for.